Hello, my friends. There's something missing from Sekiro. Of all the Souls-like games, Bloodborne was and still is my favorite, not only for the lore, the world, and the ideas presented in that game, but because it was the most active, the most proactive of the Souls-likes at the time. I love 3D action games for the rhythm, the spacing, and the feeling of presence in the world. Since starting development on Bloodborne, FromSoftware has been looking for how to place the challenge and limitations of Souls on a faster, more input-heavy, demanding game. As a small example, Bloodborne introduced being able to walk while using the blood vials, the healing items, and that small change persisted into Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro. It kept the action moving, keeps the player feeling in control when taking a bad sip and eating hits. By all measures, I think Sekiro is a great action game, but I find that I prefer the feeling and the playstyle of Bloodborne, so I'm going to elucidate why. First, in terms of player progression. In Bloodborne, more like a traditional RPG, players could direct the abilities of their character towards specific playstyles, while they mainly fell along specific stats, strength or dexterity, sometimes also arcane. The weapons that became viable with these builds each offered a different experience getting through the game. A negative of this system was a complete inability to reallocate stats. People were unable to plan for builds without researching beforehand. At least the first playthrough of the game would have some poorly chosen stats that locked out the use of weapons or certain items. However, this system also created significant replay value through new experiences. Whereas Sekiro promises seeking higher execution on more punishing difficulties, yet the experience is largely unchanged. Sekiro's leveling system may be presented as a tree of skills, but in actuality it is linear. They either unlock what are essentially contextual parries, provide incremental stat boosts to either help with posture, or grinding out experience or money for the occasional purchase. Unlocking the special moves could be exciting at first, but at the cost of spirit emblems, the currency that allows us to use prosthetics, the most customizable part of the game, it was rarely worth using anything beyond the extremely versatile double Ichimonji. Plus, having each new move locked behind the menu was limiting in a way that didn't feel necessary for a game with no stamina bar. In Bloodborne, we worked toward and equipped entire movesets with the weapons. In Sekiro, we had one moveset that had many individual pieces locked off so as to not give the player too many options at once. But as we can see from games like Devil May Cry 5, fast-paced action games with high input and no statistical limits are served better when you give the player all of the options at once. Sekiro also had a moveset that severely underutilized the concept of having a grappling hook, which was only integrated in combat for a few enemies. Sekiro would be massively improved if the combat arts could be equipped and switched between at any moment, much like the Devil Arm weapons in Devil May Cry, with no Spirit Emblem cost. Keeping the Spirit Emblem cost for prosthetic weapons, given that most of them are for glorified parries or causing an enemy to be staggered by a status effect, I feel would still provide a good aspect of having to think through your approach to a situation. For my last word on the gameplay, I enjoyed that stealth was a consideration for the design of this game. It was thematically appropriate for the narrative, but I feel that it gave this game a split identity. Due to the punishing nature of the game, even if it would be challenging and exciting to stay and fight a segment, it would often be far more effective to run in, get one kill, hide until the heat died down, and repeat until maybe only one or two enemies were left. Losing half of your money when you die, no big deal. There aren't that many important things to buy, and the ones that are important you can grind for, but losing time and progress? Absolutely not. The game incentivized laming it out, retreating rather than getting good, due to only being able to take one or two hits early on. The get good moments only really occurred during bosses, whereas the actual field, while highly traversable, was usually not solved by masterful stealth or masterful combat. And the designers knew this too. To counteract the obviously safer and superior stealth strategy, they continually made multiple scenarios where stealth was not an option. By having people face each other in rooms, large crowds, or by having a strong opponent be the mid-boss that required clearing the room before engaging. A stealth game's appeal is on the perfect run, clearing an entire area and being the only thing left on the map. Sekiro actively tries to avoid this appeal by putting hard action encounters at the end of stealthable areas, constant map design that cannot be stealthed, and eventually 2 health bar enemies and enemies that cannot be stealth killed due to being programmed to see you regardless, or unkillable respawning enemies. Stealth appears to me to be a central aspect of the original concept of the game, but one that was eventually dropped. The small example of this is the sparsely used crouching through crawl spaces and eavesdropping systems. Sekiro suffers from a degree of feature creep, features implemented in design that were never fully realized, and largely abandoned to focus on more central features, namely the magnificent combat. Bloodborne knew that it was one kind of game, and stuck to that concept like tar on cotton. Sekiro wanted to be 2 kinds of games, and eventually opted for just being an action game. A decision that worked to its benefit. Next is the disparity between item variety in Bloodborne and in Sekiro. In Bloodborne, any weapon or item is an option. Some options were particularly good, such as using fire on beasts, but they weren't perfect and they weren't going to win the day. They would incur an incremental advantage the first time you executed on the weakness, but only the central moveset and your skill of controlling the timing and the continued rhythm of the game would get you anywhere. With Sekiro's death blow system, finding a regular enemy's weakness was the same as beating them. Do they have a hat or shield? Use the axe. Did they jump in the air? Use shuriken. Are they the Gunfort lepers from Princess Mononoke? Use Sabimaru's poison. Is it a lizard? Jump and death blow. Now, I am not saying the encounters were not hard. The punishing nature of the game's treatment of flawed execution by the player guarantees that it is hard. But once you know the hard counter, you are never going to use a different option, because those options are not a different way to play the game so much as they are the wrong choice for that enemy. It's a solution to a puzzle rather than an option on the table. A Legend of Zelda dungeon rather than a match of Street Fighter. I eventually ended up only using Mistraven Feathers or Divine Abduction for any enemies that didn't have a solution, because it either gave me a free death blow in the case of Divine Abduction, or acted as a parry that gave me an advantage in the case of the Mistraven Feathers. But do you want a really strong parry? Use the umbrella. Expanding my moveset with the prosthetics may have looked different visually, but eventually everything came down to whether I knew of and chose the correct parry, either a normal parry or a special parry. And that just leaves me wondering, why did I need a special parry if parrying is a core concept of my basic controls? In Bloodborne, I never needed a special gun to get the gun parry. I just needed any gun and the right timing. Usable items also felt a lot less unique. My first playthrough of Bloodborne was a balanced build so that I could use the arcane and bludgeon stat weapons, though I started by focusing on dex weapons. The arcane items, such as the Old Hunter's Bone, Tiny Tonatrus, and the Augur of Ebrietas, were incorporated into how I played the game. I put the smackdown on hunter NPCs and Mikolash using Ebrietas' tentacles, and the slam proved helpful against a lot of faster enemies. Turning invisible helped me visualize my invulnerability when dodging, as well as being able to use it more frequently and with more precision. And using fire, shock, or arcane on my weapons made my weapons moveset feel more versatile than before. Yet none of those status effects were hard solutions to enemy encounters. They just gave me an edge up while I still had to use my own skill. In Sekiro, the items feel like they are merely stat-based, items for retreat, or items for grinding money and items. There are items that do grant some more interesting options, but they are locked behind the most difficult enemies in the game. The enemies that one would want to conceivably pull out all the stops for, but you can't due to the aforementioned correct choice for the puzzle problem. For the apparition enemies, you use divine confetti to even have a chance to fight them viably. I am sure it is possible, but no average person who wants to play other games or has a life outside of gaming is going to manage purposefully not having the item needed to deal visible damage to the enemy. And you need a second item to resist the fear status effect during these fights, which functions similarly to Frenzy in Bloodborne, taking a large chunk of your health when the bar fills, if not outright killing you. The various Spirit Fall items changed your stats, but not your playstyle. The most interesting was the Ceremonial Dagger, but only because it allowed you to sacrifice health to have a few more Spirit Emblem moves, more solutions to the puzzle enemies, extra special parries. And such was a base mechanic present in Bloodborne, but in Bloodborne, the parry was not limited to a specific enemy type based on your tool. Thus, sacrificing your health for more blood bullets was significantly more effective and helpful, significantly more valuable. In Bloodborne, when you wanted to fight a strong enemy and had trouble against them, you continually face that enemy until you learn and win. The only complaint was that you had to occasionally farm for the blood vial healing item, which did not replenish for free. But there was nothing to say you couldn't try, and have the puncher's chance at winning even without items. It rewards making the effort to learn the fight. In Sekiro, the only complaint here is that you have to farm the divine confetti, the pacifying agent, and or the gourd that acts like the pacifying agent later on. You have to farm for the opportunity to learn the fight, and it punishes you for learning by taking the items which you have to use before you have the chance to learn. These encounters neither respect the player's time with the farming entailed, nor do they respect the player's skill by removing the opportunity to learn. Games should be punishing with the game's mechanics, but not punishing to the player's limited free time, in my opinion. So the question is now, do I want Sekiro to be different? Whenever we analytical types make videos criticizing a game, the dominant assumption is that we don't like the game because we are highlighting our complaints. I think this is rather far from the truth. As once said by the purple potato himself, Plague of Gripes, we often only make analysis of games that we love. We obsess over them, and thus pull out the small details that can be tweaked here and there for an improved experience next time. So the short answer is no, and I hope I emphasized how my focus was on smaller aspects of design that culminated in a larger whole. What I do not want is for Sekiro to be changed, unless the developers feel that the change matches the intention of the game's engagement. Whereas for a games-as-service model, I believe a game should change to match the desires of the people they serve. A traditional game, a unitary piece of interactive art, need not do so. Often it is those aspects of a game that are not meant for you which open up your horizons. I would never have played the Devil May Cry series or any other action games if I hadn't been drawn out of turn-based RPGs like Final Fantasy by playing an action game like Kingdom Hearts. So let's go over what I love about Sekiro's gameplay. Specifically that it did find its focus in being an action game. I love playing a defensive fighter. In Dungeons & Dragons, I play as the monk because I love having reactions and answers to every combat scenario as a part of my core abilities. What I don't like, however, is being a traditional MMO tank class. In Warframe, I was a Rhino main for the longest time, for the invulnerability, but also the generous damage buff. I moved on to Valkyr for a glass cannon style that uses bursts of her ultimate ability to heal when things got dicey. I moved on to Gara to put up walls and reflect mirrors, not just to guard a position, but to send them shattering at enemies. And Mesa for the ability to reflect bullets or jam guns while increasing my own rate of fire. I enjoy being an offensive character with unique defensive options beyond your standard block or dodge. Sekiro's parry system is perfect for that kind of experience. The dodge option exists, but it is not as strong as previous FromSoft games, and whereas I don't like that my unique items or unlocked moves come down to being a glorified parry, which I have to equip individually, having the three-pronged counter system of jumping sweeps, sidestepping thrusts, and blocking or parrying all other attacks is great. The posture bar essentially acts as a negative stamina bar. It measures your level of precision and whether you are responding to the situation correctly. It creates tension and drama with each fight you encounter. Sekiro has a wonderful sense of rhythm. It is set at even a faster pace than Bloodborne, and that pacing continues so long as you watch for when to stop attacking and deflect, whereas Bloodborne's rhythm was dictated by the stamina bar and sometimes rewarded the arrhythmic panic of attacking after eating a hit. Being free from the limit of the stamina bar enables the player to achieve a continuous flow. This sort of system could be placed in a less punishing game to great effect as well, though I am sure that without such a limit, the work of the animation team is a large component to ensuring that each move matches the rhythm of the game. I would love to continue praising, but I think I've made my point. I hope to see the posture bar system return for future games, and would welcome it even in a hopeful Bloodborne 2. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button. It is the single best option this channel has right now to get the video in front of other interested people. New videos come out every other week, so ring the subscription bell so that you don't miss anything. See you next time, and as always, stay true.